I was 15, beginning of sophomore year, and I had just moved from a prep school to a public school. Although it was a drastic change, I welcomed it. I wanted to meet new people and experience what it would be like to go to a public school. My previous school was small, and there was never any talk of drugs or alcohol, so when I moved, this was all new to me. I had no problem making friends from different groups, but I stuck around the group of girls that smoked and were naughty. I found them far more interesting, and I had been the good girl for so long, I wanted something different. The 5 of us girls lived close to one another, me being the only one that lived in a separate neighborhood across the street. Every night, I would wait until my parents went to sleep, usually around 9 or 10, and I would then sneak downstairs, go out the back door, walk along the side of our house, and out the back gate. As a side note, this area was all rock, and the gate made noises when opened or closed, so I would try to be as quiet as possible. If you're wondering if I was ever scared to leave the house, I wasn't. We lived in a small, quiet city that has a low crime rate, and I felt very safe. My house was the first house in the neighborhood right off the main road. I would cross this road every night and walk into the opposite neighborhood. This only took mere minutes, and I could see SNK's house from mine. We would meet up and continue to walk through their neighborhood to meet up with A and C. We really didn't do much when we snuck out, just walked around their neighborhood looking for places to hide, hang out, and smoke weed and cigarettes. Around 1 to 2 a.m., we would begin walking back. This particular night, I texted my sister to unlock the back door for me. I knew she was at home in the living room with her friend who was staying the night. She texted back quickly that she unlocked it. After passing S&K's place and saying goodnight to them, I proceed to make the 2-minute walk back to my house across the main road. It was a quiet night and don't remember seeing anyone else around me. There were no cars on the road, but this isn't unusual as this is the type of place where very few people are out at this hour. Though I was also focused on getting into the house and might not have been paying the kind of attention I should have. I walked through the back gate and turned briefly to give it a light shake to make sure it was closed. Again, I noticed nothing off. I proceeded up the side of my house through the gravel and rock. I should mention that we have 2 back doors. One is your standard sliding glass door on a separate porch that enters into the dining room, and then the door I entered through is just a standard door with a glass cutout from top to bottom with blinds covering the window portion. This door leads to the main family room. I walk in and I'm immediately greeted by my sister and her friend playing Guitar Hero. I close the door behind me and lock it. I remember thinking I was hungry and wanted to make a quesadilla before heading upstairs. As I begin walking to the kitchen, seconds after locking the door, we hear the knob from the door I just came through being jiggled violently, like someone was trying to get in, and they wanted in. We all stop and stare at the door, waiting to see what happens next, hearts beating furiously. The blinds were shut, so we couldn't see anything, and it felt like this went on forever, though it was only seconds. After it stopped, my sister and I looked at each other in horror, and I knew we both wanted to wake up our mom. But before we could make any moves, my sister's friend, who is stupidly fearless and 2 years younger than me, sprints up and out the back door calling for anyone who's out there, our 2 Rotties following closely behind her. Nothing was there. We brought her and the dogs back in and continued on with our night. I texted my friends to see if they had played a joke on me, but they all swore it wasn't them. I believed them. They knew my mom didn't want me hanging around any of them in the first place, and they weren't wanting to get me in trouble. Nothing like this ever happened again, and I continued to sneak out most of that school year, but waited a few days for that incident to blow over. I know. Stupid. I was thinking back to after I entered the backyard and never heard the creaky gate or any footsteps in the rocks behind me, and nothing felt off. Everything happened so quickly that I feel I should have heard something or someone when I was out there. Even if this person had made it inside, they would have been greeted by 2 Rottweilers and we would have had time to run. I feel that someone saw me as a crime of opportunity. I don't know what their intentions were, but I don't think they were good. Looking back 12 years later, I should have been more careful and stopped sneaking out completely. This was sometime around 2005. My boyfriend and I had just moved into a new rental home. It felt great since we had been living in an apartment complex with noisy neighbors above us and below us. The neighborhood we moved to was built back in the 70s, and all of our neighbors were at least in their 60s and mostly retired, so it was a pretty quiet area. My boyfriend and I had jobs waiting tables at a local restaurant a few miles down the road. We had staggered shifts, so he worked the morning shift and I worked the night shift. He would come home at different times in the afternoon, depending on how busy it was that day. One afternoon, I was sitting at home, on my day off, mind you, watching daytime TV. I get up to go to the bathroom to go pee. Something good was happening on TV, so I left the door to the bathroom open so I could hear it and wouldn't miss anything. As I'm sitting there doing my business, I hear a loud thud. I immediately thought, my boyfriend is home? That was a quick shift, since it had only been a couple of hours since he left. I hear another loud thud. I'm thinking that he can't get the old rickety door to open, so I don't mind it and keep checking my text messages on my phone. I heard one more loud thud, and the front door make that rusty squeaking sound that it usually does when opened. "Hey honey, how was work?" I shouted out while still sitting on the toilet. He didn't say anything. As I was sitting there, the two cats we had that were watching TV with me in the living room darted past my bathroom door and into our bedroom. One of them stops in front of the bathroom door, looks back towards the door where the noise was coming from, and has its tail puffed out like it saw something it didn't like. Weird, because they don't ever do that when my boyfriend comes home. I don't think anything of it and say, "Hey honey, how was your shift?" No response. Seconds later, I say, "Was it that bad?" Still, no response. As I am still looking at my phone and on the toilet, I can see my boyfriend from the corner of my eye standing in the doorway. He stands there for a few seconds, watching me pee for some reason. I look up from my phone at him to say, "Why are you staring at me like that?" And who I saw at that moment was not my boyfriend. I knew then and there that this wasn't him or even a friend of his. What I was looking at was a man, dressed in ragged clothing from head to toe. His hair was ashy, and his skin was extremely sunburnt, like that of a homeless person. One of the things that I remember most was looking into his eyes. They were so bloodshot. Whoever I was staring at, I looked right in the eyes and out of shock said, "What the fuck?" in a very loud voice. He immediately ran. Not knowing where he went, I pulled up my pants, bolted for the front door, and ran as fast as I could to the neighbor's house. I told them to call 911. The police get there and treat it as a home invasion. They entered my house, guns pointed and yelling,
"Glendale PD, come out with your hands up."
They never found the guy. When all was settled, the police told us that there was a serial rapist in the area. We didn't know about this. We never really watched the local news, so we had no idea that there was a serial rapist out on the loose. The police showed us how the suspect broke into our home. We had a side door on the house that was used to get into the backyard. It had been forcefully kicked in. Whoever wanted to get into my house really wanted to get in. What I'll never be able to get over is that he just stood there, in the doorway, and just stared at me on the toilet, without even me knowing. It still haunts me to this day.